Hello and welcome to another episode of our Innerva interview series. And today I'm really glad to be joined by the wonderful Naseem Akhtar, founder of Saheli Hub. Big shout out to Naseem. So thanks for joining us, Naseem. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Liz.
I was actually thinking about you last week because I attended the APSI Sports and Leisure Seminar, and that's where we met. It was 2 years ago now,
Yeah,
wasn't
I
it?
know. Shocking, isn't it, how time flies? Yes, 2 years ago.
Yeah, I remember making a beeline for you after your talk. I was so inspired. As soon as the breakout area came, I was like, right,
I
I
think
need to
it's
talk
one
to
of
her.
those ones where when I was talking, and I say this line sometimes where my dad died at 60, and I think I went to that talk, and it was one of those emotional moments where I remembered my mum had passed away, and then I said those words, yes, and my dad died at the early age of 60, and then it just hit me, and I started crying, and I always remember that, thinking, why did I cry in my presentation? But yeah, I remember that one well. I always remember the ones I'm crying.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I mean, I think I cried in your presentation. I definitely got goosebumps. It really impacted me, like the amazing work that you do and just your sheer passion and kind of emotion around what you do and the impact that Saheli Hub has as a whole. So focusing on Saheli Hub, what you do, you're very much focused on improving community health and well-being. Can you share a little bit about how it all started and how the activities and services have impacted the community over the years?
Yeah, it started as an idea way back when breakfast TV'd come on. Me as an Asian girl growing up, we'd seen lots of people exercise, go to gyms. All the big gyms have started up, and it was something where everybody else did it, but we didn't. And as a community, but we used to have the biggest sports centre on the edge of my neighbourhood, and nobody went there. Forget the women, the men never went there. And it was one of those things where when I got to about, coming up to 28, 29, I'd had 2 kids. I thought, I'll go to the local. If nobody else is going to go, I'm going to go to the women's hour. And I got there and I saw this whole room full of about 100 pieces of kit, I think. And there's only 3 women in there, and I was the only Asian woman there. And I remember thinking, well, what a waste. And then I asked the lady who was at the gym, and she just said, well, none of the women come here, and most of them don't come here because of this, that, and the other. And I just came back thinking, what a disappointment. And then the local neighbourhood forum wanted to engage women. We were going to have CCTV in those days, which was unheard of. We were one of the first few in the area that did it because of some of the crime, etc., behind the scene. And then the next thing you know, we did the survey. They got women engaged except for the Asian women. And then they decided they would set up a separate group for women to stop, to kind of making sure we've got every woman's views. And we started to meet to talk about safety and CCTV. And then when that survey came to an end, we just thought, well, why don't we carry on meeting, which we did. And then we decided what would we want to see in the area. And what most women said is they'd love a health and fitness facility run by women for women. But we didn't know if everybody else felt like that. And somebody explained to me, Naseem, you must go and get a feasibility study commissioned, because just because you want it and you'll click, maybe nobody else wants it. And I was like, she's probably right. And you should have it done independently. And I was new to community work. I didn't know how it worked. So I said, okay. And what we did is we got some money from the Digbeth Trust, and we commissioned a feasibility study. An independent consultant said, if you get some questionnaires done. And I said, what's a good response? And she said, if you send out 100 and you get about 15, 20, that's not bad. And I was like, oh, that's a bit rubbish, personally speaking. Anyway, so we hired this lady. She got a survey done. We sent it out, and then we held 2 community local meetings. And bearing in mind, I grew up in that area, I could contact anyone and everyone, so to speak. And then we had 256 local women give their opinions of what they wanted. And
Wow.
what they wanted was a health, and they wanted to do swimming, exercise, fitness, and then sport, physical activity. And we asked why, because she said you can't just ask them and they say they want that when there's a big sports center on the edge of their neighborhood. And we asked, why don't you use the sports center on the edge of your neighborhood? And They said it was because there was men in and around the buildings. The 1 hour for women only, 1 or 2 hours were at times that the women weren't free, and it wasn't for their leisure, at their leisure time, for their leisure centre to be open. And more importantly, they just felt that their culture wasn't understood. The way things were delivered didn't suit that community, language, etc. And so they just never went. And so once I got this study, I thought, woo, I know what women want. They're always talking about women's voices. We want to do things that women want. We want to hear community views. So I went to the head of the NHS, and I sort of said at the time, and I said, here you go. I've got a feasibility study. I'd love you to help me to, for example, get a fitness centre for the area, you know, to improve people's health. And I remember he said to me, we don't do leisure, we do health. You need to go and speak to the city council. They do fitness and sport. And kind of, I was really disappointed. And then he said, and by the way, we've already got a centre. But that centre was, you know, 2 bus rides away from where I lived. Nobody in the local community would go. And there was no such thing as childcare provision or anything. So so then I went to the head of the city council sport division. And I remember going in, speaking to someone from Alexander Stadium. And he basically said to me, we don't do health, we do fitness. And he said something like, I said to him, we've got the biggest sports centre on the edge of our neighbourhood. Could we work together? Could I do like a morning? And then if it really works well, do an afternoon. And then if it really works well, do a whole day for women. And his words were, women, Asian women doing sport all day, that's never going to happen. And I remember being really disappointed, and I got up and I kind of left. And I always joke, the Borsalith in me sort of said, I'll show you, mate. And I left, and I never went back. And then we got our first ever money as an organisation for doing young girls activities, because in my neighbourhood, girls went to school, went home, went to school, and they never did anything beyond that. And so
Yeah.
I thought, you know what, I'll change things for girls. If I can't change it for women, I'll change it at least for girls. So we got £10,000 from 5,000 each from different funds. I grouped them together, and I took girls out rock climbing, skiing, canoeing, you know, things I would have liked to done. What would they do if they're middle class, well-to-do girls? They'd go out skiing, canoeing, weekend clubs, and that's what I did. And we got it was tough at first. Many parents didn't want to let their daughters go to it, but after a few came and really enjoyed it, more and more joined. And of course, the girls didn't really want to do it. They wanted to do pottery and jewelry making, etc. But after I did 6 months of it, I asked them, what do you want to do? And they said, we want to do quad biking, speedboating. We want to go to Wales. We want to see the seaside. We want to go where the water is, that kind of thing. And then one day I did a presentation where it was all about, they were doing this huge launch about centres of excellence. And somebody asked me, a really nice guy, I can't think his name off the top of my head now, because you'll see his face. He asked me to come and help do a presentation, because he said they've got all this money, they want to do things for community, but really the community voice isn't there. So come on, Naseem, come and do a presentation for me. And that was the first time where I did, you know, like a big crowd of people. And what I said was, here you are talking about regeneration, but you haven't got the community at the heart. It's all about what you think we want. You keep delivering what we don't need. And what you should really be doing is consulting with women and the community properly, and give them what they want. Sorry, what they need, not what you think they want. And £140,000 is spent per person in my neighbourhood, and nothing has changed for women and girls. There's nothing I can point to that says 6 point something million had been spent in my neighbourhood. And I said, and here you are trying to get onto your regeneration career ladders. You don't really care about the community. You just want to go up and up the career ladder. And I basically was really horrible. But I was horrible in a pointed way to say, nothing's changed in my community.
No.
You may have given us 6 million. You may have had this board representative, but actually nothing's changed for women and girls, especially. And then one person heard me, one male from the lottery, who sent me, who the next, on the Monday, this was on a Friday, on the Monday, there's a phone call, and I was in the office that day, and I happened to answer the call. And the guy said, hi, I'd like to speak to the lady who did the presentation last Friday at Wolverhampton Racecourse. And I was like, oh my God, he's going to report me to my boss for all the things I said. And I was like in two minds, do I own up? Do I lie? I don't know. So in the end, I just owned up. I said, yeah, that was me. He said, well, there's a new fund coming out called Active Communities. Active England, new fund coming out, and we'd really like you to apply. I love your idea of what you wanted for women and that consultation. And if you'd like to apply, I said, oh, I can't be bothered, because we'd applied for a few things and we didn't get the money. And I was a bit jaded by then, thinking they just say on the application forms, you know, ethnic minorities, women, poverty, deprivation. It doesn't matter. They don't give it to you. But this guy said, we're going to do it differently. We're not going to ask you to spend your money and retrospectively get it back. We're going to ask you for a vision. Send us your vision, and then we'll see if we like that vision, and we'll help you to write a business plan, and we'll help you. And I said, yeah, put the phone down. I thought, I'm not going to do that. And I left it. And then on Good Friday, who rings you on a Good Friday? He'd managed to ring the office, get my mobile number. No such thing as GDPR in those days. So he got my number. And then he called me on the Friday. Who does that? And he said, Naseem, I asked you to send me an A4, sheet of your vision. And I hadn't gone to further education. I wasn't allowed. I didn't go to college, didn't go to uni. I was like scared of that. And with that jadedness of, they always say the right things and the right words, but they don't mean it. I didn't apply. And then he said, look, we're going to have a meeting next week. Please, could you send something to me, and just an A4, nothing big, no big plan, just your vision on A4. So I sent him a picture of the girls in yellow cagoule stuck in a ravine, learning how to ride a bike. Not one of them knew how to ride a bike, which was shocking. I didn't learn in my generation, but I couldn't understand it why the second and third generation weren't learning. And we taught them how to ride a bike. We'd gone down to Sutton Park, and so I sent him a picture of the girls stuck in a ravine, splashed with mud all over them, yellow goggles. They had hijabs on, helmets on top. And I thought, well, that's half the A4 done. And then
a picture tells 1,000 words.
Yeah, and in August, I got this letter. And I always joke, it was the most lovely letter, because it had this posh envelope, posh paper. And I remember opening it thinking, wow. And it said, dear Mrs. Akhtar, we'll give you 258,000. 2,500, 2,000, 25. Oh my God, 258,000. They're going to give me 258,000 for a building. Oh my God. And I couldn't believe it. And I remember waving it in the office saying, I'm going to get 258,000. I remember. And I was on like cloud nine. There's so many times I'd given up and people hadn't listened. Anyway, so then we opened up the gym. We worked with a local amazing organization at the time. He's moved on, but he still came in contact with, working with me now for the new building. And what they did is they did a no win, no fee, and they said, we really love what you want to do, and you do find really good people in the system. And he said, we always build huge buildings and we never know who's going to come in it, but we've got what you want in a building. So what we'll do is we'll draw all your plans up, we'll do all your costings, we'll write your business plan, and if you get the money, we'll project manage it for you and recover our costs that way. But if you don't get the money, no big deal, but we can understand why you want it. And then we got the money. So then they project managed it for us. And then we opened up our building, and our key performance indicator was to have 250 women paying £10 a month. And we got that in 2 weeks. We had 255 women in 2 weeks. And then it just started to grow. And then we started to teach women how to ride a bike. We started to do really well. And then on the day of the launch, when we did a big launch for the centre, and we got some drummers, Asian style, to drum it, and then we cut the ribbon and everything, and we had some Bhangra dancers inside, and it was amazing. And then someone was there from the NHS and said, we'd love to work with you, because we've been trying to get women to manage their long-term health conditions, and we've been working with the local kind of leisure centres, but the women, very few turn up for the first appointment, but they never return for the second appointment. So maybe we could work with you and pilot it differently. And we did. And we got our first commission contract in our first year, working with, I think it was 170 women. And from that, it grew to about 500. And then when we got to 2010, we were asked to deliver. We opened our site in 2006. And then in 2010, we were asked to look at if we could deliver on the other side of Birmingham, which had a similar population with a similar kind of cultural needs. And then we got to a stage where in I think it was 2015, 16, I met the leader of the city council, and he wanted us to look at trying to get more women into running, I think it was. Hang on, no, it's been 8 years. So yeah, about 2015, 2014, we were asked to do some running and help women to start booked to run, and he asked me to come and see the half marathon. And when I got there, there was barely any women of any reflection other than white middle class or white well-to-do, uh, white working class, but there was no Asian, black, female really, and men, to be honest with you. And so he said, "Could you help me? Could you do something about it?" I said, "Yeah, I could." He said, "How many?" I said, "Probably about 17." And he kind of looked at me really, and I was like, "Yeah." And then we started to learn how to run, and I had to learn myself. And I, I sent messages to some of the women who'd been cycling with us, who'd been walking with us, doing outdoor activities with us. And I said, "I've put your name down." And they were like, "For what?" I said, "That event in October." "What event in October?" "The event in October in Birmingham." "I put your name down." "What for?" "The event, the half marathon." They were like, "What?" I said, "Yeah, we'll do it together. I can't run, you can't run. We'll do it together." But anyway, long story short, they kind of learnt to run with me. I got them to 6 miles. Couldn't do it past 6 miles. I didn't know. I couldn't motivate myself to go beyond 6 miles. And then I was working with the wellbeing service from Birmingham City Council, and they said, "You know what? We'll send you a trainer." And this is where you really learn about how communities can operate and see things, because then we got a trainer. But when the trainer came, because she was under the impression we're going to run a half marathon, which we were, but we were going to do it our way, slowly but surely, she'd say things like, "Oh, you can't eat this, you can't eat that, you can't do this, you have to turn up 3 times a week, you got to do this." She alienated a lot of people, and we lost quite a lot of people because of her. So then I took it back over myself, and I said, "It's okay, thank you. At least you've shown me how to do it. I'll do it myself." And I did. And we then in October, 17 of us did run a half marathon. We got
And
home to like a deluge of phone calls, messages, text messages, men more than women saying, "Well done. You've proved everybody wrong. We're really proud of you. Do you know what you've done for women? Do you know what you've done for Muslim women? Do you know what you've done for Asian women? Do you know what you've done for Sikh women?" It was just really nice. So many men were really, really proud of us, which was, right.
huge,
And I
yeah,
remember,
huge.
yeah. And what was funny was one of our ladies who fully hijabs, niqabs, everything when she used to come into the gym to teach. She said her father-in-law turned round to her son and said, "They've sorted the women out. When are you going to do something about the men?" Which was so funny when she came up and told me. And he was someone who objected to her doing all this exercise and fitness. But all of a sudden, he turned around to his son and said, "They've all sorted themselves out. When are you going to do anything for the men?" So it was really nice, really lovely message. UB40 sent us some messages saying, "Well done, putting Birmingham and Borselith on the map" and stuff. So it was really nice. And from there, we just kind of grew. It was really, I think, what's really funny is we'd slugged for years, but when we did the running, and because we got that national exposure on TV, and it just like blew out the
It was that
water.
kind of the snowball effect. Once people
Yeah,
knew and heard, who wouldn't be invested and kind of,
yeah.
want to see more of what you do?
Yeah. And from then it definitely grew, and then we started to do regular, more development growth. And now, we employ about 20 women. Most of them, if not majority of all of them, are from within the local community. We operate in 3 different inner city areas. We deliver running, cycling, swimming, triathlons. We do it in our own way. We call it triathlon. There isn't anything we can't do, I always say, unless it includes something that we don't have. Like rugby contacted us, but we don't have a rugby field. We don't have enough. Our space is not big enough to practice that. And you know how it is with notoriously with communities. You have to start something within somewhere where they feel safe. That space, they will never travel out
Of
until they can.
course.
Yeah.
Do you know what strikes me listening to you talk, Naseem? I think 2 things were coming to mind. Number one is your tenacity. I think, the whole kind of, I'm going to act like from Borsal Heath. I'm going to do this. Your drive has really been instrumental in kind of creating what you have done at Saheli Hub. And just your focus on the community, you're from the community, you're for the community, from the community, for the community. And that's something, having met the team at Saheli, is definitely embodied across the whole organisation. And it is such a wonderful feel being part of that.
Yeah. And I would say to you, remember the health statistics are so bad in my community. When you look at it, even then, the national average is 75, the city average is 73. But in communities like mine, most men don't make 65. They just do not make 65. And that's where I was talking about the APSI conference, where my dad didn't reach 60. That's unacceptable. I mean, it should be a national scandal. You know, most men in my neighborhood die a decade sooner than their white counterparts. And it's the same in the other sites that we operate from. And most of it could be tackled by being more physically active, because it's mainly coronary heart disease, diabetes, preventable disease. Is it 145 billion will be spent by the NHS on preventable diseases that could, or preventable illnesses that could be alleviated, could be kind of reversed, etc., by being more physically active, by getting active. But if you look,
Absolutely. And I think you're definitely making shockwaves in what you're doing in terms of doing things differently. And you've already mentioned some of the health initiatives that you've run for women, but I know that that's kind of expanded massively over the years. So you've got the GP referred capped, it's capped, isn't
yeah,
it? The capped
yeah,
program.
totally appropriate.
Tell us a little bit more about that, because I think
Yeah,
that's
so
addressing men and women. You know, it's the whole community that you're looking at with that,
yeah,
isn't it?
so our CAPT program came about 3 years ago, when because of COVID, there was the health inequalities came together, and locally on the second area that we operate in the east of Birmingham, inequalities team came together, inequalities team for the NHS came together and decided they would do a program for Washwood Heath, and we got involved and engaged, and we were already delivering for almost 10 years there. And they asked us to work with the local GP, who's been amazing. And what he said was, you know, I get 10-15 minutes per person, but I know their issues are beyond just what I can do for them. So their issues might be, you know, homelessness, addiction, abuse, domestic violence, so many other things. And if I got a chance to spend, I'd probably have to spend about 45 minutes to an hour to get to the root of it, and I can't do it. But I also know that diabetes is rife, is because we as a community don't understand what we eat, and the way we eat, when we eat, the portions, and what we're eating together. And so he came and did a training with the whole of our team. And that's the thing at Saheli, we try and do, everyone has to be trained. So if the receptionist doesn't understand our program, how's she going to sell it to someone? If our receptionist doesn't sit on a bike and know what a joy it is to be on a bike, how's she going to convince anyone else? So we try and do it so that everybody in the team does the training together. And so what we learned was about carbs and how it affects us, how, you know, bread, we've got to avoid chapati. We love chapati. We've got to avoid rice.
I
We
love
love
chapati.
rice. We've got to avoid potatoes. We love potatoes, so on, so pasta, everything. So everything as an Asian community, and the majority of the community really love, we've got to avoid. Our problem is we triple carb everything as a community. So anyway, so through that that training, and the fact we already provided physical activity, and the fact we started to do that kind of holistic sit down for 45 minutes per person, ask them what they do. And so many in my community say, oh, I've given up sugar. Have you? Yep, given up sugar. But I eat cakes, I eat biscuits, I eat chapati, I eat rice, I eat and you're like, oh, I drink a can of cola, you know, every 3 days. I do. It was just, honestly, it was such a learning curve. And so now what we've done is we've done our own kind of version of what it is, and we do things like a diabetes bingo. You know, how much do you eat in a week? And then from that we started to tailor it. So when somebody came in, not only did we ask them, you know, how much activity you do, what are your health conditions. So the GP, we had a system with the GPs refer people in who were pre-diabetic, and then what we would do is explain to them about their food, their what their intake is, how the body turns those carbohydrates into sugar, how we need to do a low fat, low carb diet, also the fact that they need to get more physically active, and so we did this whole, and what are other issues in their area, could we signpost them to other services. And honestly, it's proved such an amazing kind of, the one thing I would say to you is this outdated mode idea of 12 weeks program in an area when there's a cost of living crisis, there's issues going around. How many people are going to turn up for 12 weeks in a row on, you know, 0-hour contracts to hear about their diet? They're just not going to. And it was really hard. So what we then learned halfway through is we're not making that impact. So what we did was we started at the end, but they were all willing to do activity, which was great. So what we learned to do is we start the activity with a quick 10-minute talk about, it could be something like, just sugar. It could be about carbohydrates. It could be about chapati, potatoes and rice, and don't put it all together on one plate. So we found little kind of sound bites throughout the 12 weeks. Every week they turned up for an activity, and that really worked much better than asking people to come and listen to, a whole 2 hours for 12 weeks about their diet.
Well, it's engaging, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're giving them the information, almost bite-sized chunks, and then also there's the carrot at the end of that, where you're actually going to do something that you enjoy, and there's an
Exactly, and
activity.
people would think, oh my God, so I can't eat chapati, I can't eat. So it was almost like, well, I'm not going to change anything if I can't eat everything. So what we
Yeah,
found was, by doing it by sound bites, they heard bit by bit, so they
yeah.
could make changes bit by bit, and I think that really happened. And national statistics say the highest rate of engagement, I think it's not it's about 9%, 9% or 15%. Our first time engagement was 65%. But it's that thing of keeping them, which was the harder, what we found out with the 12 weeks program. So that's why we kind of rechanged. So since then, we've been working with the local GPs and built a really supportive kind of referral system with the GPs. The other thing is, we then lucky enough to have met you, and we put the Innerva machines in that Alum Rock Community Centre. So now not only can they do physical activity outside or cycling, walking, but those who are less active or less, what shall I say, mobile, or have a fear of starting, and they can start with the Innerva system, and that's really, really good, and it's proving more and more popular. We've recently secured some funding from the neighbourhood network scheme to have somebody there, so we can provide a kind of like a Monday to Sunday service at different times for people to come in and use the nervous systems, and that's proving really, really popular. And through the diabetes program, with the nervous system, with the physical activity, we've had some amazing case studies of people who've lost weight, and I mean 4 to 5 stone, because they've started to get really active. And we had one guy who lost 5 stone, slowly but surely put it back on, and now he's come back. Now he's started to maintain it. So we did it quickly first time, put it back on, and didn't want to go back to how he was, and then came back, and now he's on a regular, he's half the size, and he says, because we've told him the statistic, which is, and we can do it in a nice way to say, on average in this neighborhood, you're a male, this is how much you weigh, you've got this and this condition already at this age, you probably won't see 70. And that
Which is a
almost has been like,
stark.
yeah, and it's almost been this kind of like, we've putting up a mirror to them, and they suddenly just say,
Yeah.
I don't want that. And he actually said, this guy, gentleman, he said, you mean I'm not going to grow up and see my daughter get to secondary school? No. And he went,
Mm.
I don't want that. And he loves his daughter. His little like pride and joy. He takes her everywhere with him. And all of a sudden he just said, I'm not having that. And since then he's lost weight, and he's maintained that weight loss, and he's like such an amazing case study, and he talks to everyone else about how he's done it,
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? The word of mouth within communities in general is one of the biggest kind of advocacies that organizations have. Like you say, his case study is going to support other people and kind of bring them into what you're doing. So it's so good to hear. And honestly, I think the impact that you have within the community is staggering, and you do it in a very sensitive way that allows people to actually engage with the work that you're doing. And there's such great work.
One other capped patient I can tell you about, another gentleman, Black African Caribbean, came in, his GP was trying to get him onto tablets, and he went no, and he changed his GP, and then he came to the GP where we work with them, and then he was sent to us, and now he's not only lost weight, he's not only got active, he's become our cycling lead, and now he leads other people because he wanted it. And he says, my whole family, I've had to explain to them about the food we eat, how we, he said, I've changed my whole family's kind of lifestyle about what we eat, how we eat, portions we eat, how much we eat, when we eat, that kind of thing. So he's become this person who's a health guru, so to speak, in his family. And he now is our cycling lead because he delivers that kind of chat to any of our participants to let them say, I was in your boat, I used to do that, I used to weigh that much. Now look what I do, And if someone
Well, it's
is
the ripple
very,
effect, isn't it, into the
yes,
wider community. The people who attend and kind of go through your programs,
yeah,
they're going to be having impact on people in their lives as well. Like, it's not just people who come to you directly. So it's so great to hear all the work that you're doing with the cat fair, and we're certainly so grateful to partner with you. I think it's been so exciting to see our machines going into Alum Rock, and linking in with yourselves, and also Clarion Futures as well, because you are
yeah,
very good at kind of creating kind of key partnerships.
partners, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And
To pick up Clarion Futures, if they hadn't given us that site, we wouldn't be where we are now. We wouldn't be able to have the Innerva machines, and we wouldn't be able to deliver, Monday to Sunday services. And more importantly, not only have they given us the site to develop and grow, but they've been real partners in helping raise funding, funding us, and kind of like, we just recently they're nominated for award, a national award, and we won that last week at locality, which was amazing. But they've just genuinely been really, really such easy slash supportive partners, just like yourselves. So I mean, we wouldn't definitely be here now without those two partnerships in Allen Rock Community Centre.
absolutely, absolutely. I think when organisations have a shared mission and they want to make a difference, then it tends to be where partners will kind of find each other
Yeah.
and collaborate well, because they have that kind of focus that they want to make an impact. So thank you so much for your time, Naseem. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you as always. One question, just looking into the future. What do you see as the future for Saheli Hub? Have you got any new programs or initiatives that you're kind of really excited about, or you'd like to develop in the future that you're not doing already?
So we've been working with a lot of NGBs, and we've got a really amazing partnership with Squash, where we are up the road from a really one of the top clubs, Priory in the city, most exclusive clubs, and what makes my heart sing every 2 sessions a week. But some of the poorest women get into a minibus and go to the top Priory club and play squash. I just love that. It makes me happy every day when I see that. It's a really silly little thing, but it warms
Oh
my
no,
heart.
I can see why.
And then the other thing is, we've had a vision for Calthorpe to turn it into a fully functioning health and fitness facility. At the moment, it's just like a small kind of, 2 rooms knocked into one, kind of like we've got 3 bedrooms at the most space, and it's really tight. And we have got a vision, and we're working with some of the local delivery pilots program and others, and the city, to try and turn that into fully functioning health and fitness and sports, if I can push it, sports facility for the community, to show everyone it can be done. And more importantly, it's not built on the edge of a neighborhood for outsiders, or in the middle of the neighborhood for outsiders. It's actually going to be smack bang in the community, in the park, for the community. Obviously outsiders can come, but I want to make sure the priority is for those that are living in that community. And
Absolutely.
a long time ago I said your health should be a bit like going to get your milk and your bread and your eggs every morning. You should be out there every morning to go into that center, come back and do whatever you want to do. So I think unless we make health kind of our daily routine, going to school, dropping off your child, coming into the center, doing whatever, or coming back from work, getting into the center, doing whatever, going home, we've got to make it a part of the community's lifestyle, so that things really change. Because if you look at the levels of inactivity in communities like ours, 1 session a week is not good enough. Genuinely, it needs to be
Mm.
3 to 5 times a week, and try and make it fun. I think that's the other thing. We always try and make it fun, enjoyable first, before we think about anything else, and I think that's what really works for us.
Yeah, and I can, having visited the setting on many occasions, I'm testament at how fun the setting actually is. So, what a note to end on. Thank you so much for your time, Naseem. And I'd strongly recommend anybody going and checking out your end user impact report, because the figures, the pictures, everything are absolutely outstanding. So, thank you, and that's the end of the interview.
Thank you, and just should say thank you to my team, who are amazing.
I second that. They truly are.